So we'll get started. And my name is Dodie Newman, treasurer of Golden State Bonsai Federation. And I appreciate you all being here tonight. And you're in for a treat. Let me give you a little background on Mauro, and he'll fill us in on more as well. But Mauro Stemberger was born in 1978 in Feltre. Is that how you say it? Feltre,
Yes,
Italy?
Feltre.
Say it again.
Feltre.
Feltre. My Italian's not very good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
He works as an architect and a bonsai artist. At the age of 14, he was fascinated by the art of bonsai and began his journey with his local club. From 1994 to 2001, he worked with numerous notable bonsai artists. In 2005, he founded the Italian Bonsai Dream, his workshop where enthusiasts can work and enjoy bonsai. To learn more about him and his garden, see theitaliandream.com, and that will also be posted in the video of this recording that we'll have on the GSBF website.
Thank you.
And I can give a little more background. In 2006, he graduated with his architectural degree from IUAV in Venice. In 2008, he became recognized as a CBI bonsai instructor. From 2008 to 2010, he was president of the UBI, which is the Italian Bonsai Association, and director of the UBI Bonsai Magazine. You've been a busy man. He has done demonstrations and workshops for bonsai clubs and associations all over the world. And we're so excited because Mauro is going to be one of our two headliners at the GSBF Bonsai Rendezvous in October of 2025 in Santa Ynez, California. He'll be conducting two Bring Your Own Tree workshops on Friday, October 24th, and an all-day demonstration on Saturday, October 25th. And the material that he is going to be working on Saturday is amazing. He particularly loves to work with conifers, pines, junipers, and especially larch. His trees have won numerous awards throughout Europe. And tonight we're lucky to have him as he's going to explain the ins and outs about wiring. Wiring seems to be a challenge for most of us. So I know that we're all going to benefit from his information. So I want to give you a few little details as far as please type your questions in the chat, and I will ask them of Mauro as the meeting progresses. And as I mentioned, this is being recorded and it'll be on our GSBF website in a couple of weeks. So without further ado, Mauro, take it away, and looking forward to this program.
So since I started bonsai and I was practicing bonsai with my club, I always try to find a way to make the wiring easier for myself. And especially, after I started doing bonsai more professionally and I started having students, every time someone was asking me how I do this, how I do that regarding wiring, I have to give a good explanation. So one day I said, I need to find out a method that I can explain to my students and can be always reliable and work every time. Because otherwise it's always a problem for people to try to understand a system, what I call wiring system, because obviously it's a technique, so we need a rule to apply it well, and that system can be applied anytime to any tree and always work. Obviously, every tree is different, but if we set some basic rules properly and we constantly repeat them, we can be able to solve what is the system tree and wire it perfectly. Said that, we have to start from some very simple points. First point, in my opinion, is the biggest difference between using copper and using aluminum. So, for example, in my personal point of view, I prefer to use aluminum wire for deciduous trees most of the time, because aluminum is much easier to apply, and for deciduous, because they don't have a very thick bark, it's much easy to damage the thin bark if we wire with copper that tend to be a little bit more stiffer. Also, the moment of unwiring the tree, generally when we wire with aluminum wire, is easier to unwire the branches. And for example, if we use copper, we have to cut the wire off. And obviously, if the tree doesn't have a very thick bark, the risk by using a wire cutter is again to damage the bark of the tree. That's why I prefer to use aluminum in general on the deciduous tree. Copper, in the other side, is much better for conifer, where we apply major tension to bend the branches, differently from deciduous tree, where generally the movements that we give to the branches are not so dramatic. On conifer, we tend to do more dramatical work and more bending. So it's better to have copper that, first of all, is stronger. Second, we can use a smaller gauge compared to the size of the branch. And third, as soon as we apply the wire to the branch, the copper stays in position. It's not all the time flexible. Basically, the material change its characteristic and get stiffer and stiffer along the time. So if we bend the branch, we put in a certain position, the branch, even when the branch is growing, the copper is getting stiffer and holding the branch in position. That's to start. Second point we need to analyze is the point about the size of the wire. So, first of all, we need to understand which type of wiring are we doing. Are we going to do a structural wire where we want to bend drastically the branches? So in that case, we need a little bit to overwire the branches because we need strength. Or, for example, we are going to do just a refinement where most of the structure, especially primary, secondary, and eventually some tertiary branches, are already in position. So we only fine wire the tree so we can a little bit use less gauges because there is a minimum movement on fine branches, so we don't have to overwire. Now, overwire in relation of what? We need to set basically a point and then from that point decide where to go. So my personal, set point is for copper, a fourth of the diameter of the branch into its first section. So if I have to wire a primary branch, the first section from the trunk outside, that's my section where I refer as, my gauge selection for the wire that I'm going to put. And generally for copper, because copper, as I said, is strong, I use a fourth. For aluminum, I use a third because I have a little bit to overwire because aluminum is not very strong. So I need a little bit of a bigger proportion between the branch and the wire. Also, saying that, as I said, because the aluminum I normally use for the deciduous trees, I have a little bit, and the deciduous tend to be a little bit more stiff than a conifer. Not so flexible. I want a little bit to overwire in general to have at least a little bit of help for that operation. Then, how we wire a tree? Another very simple thing. We start from the bottom branches and we wire up, and then we start from the inner branches and we wire out. I have with me a little dummy tree that I build and I use it every time I do a wiring lesson. And I had here with me on this trip. So here is typical system that I always refer. So we have primary branches, we have secondary branches, tertiary branches, branches from the bottom up to the top. So you can see how part of the main salmon color wire, orange color wire that goes up to the main line. I have a yellow wire that is connecting two of the main structural branches, that we have green that is connecting other two, and so on for the other. So as I said, I started from the bottom branches, wire up, and then start, for example, here from the inner branches and wire out. Why this is important? This is important because it basically introduce the main important rule about the technique of wiring, that if Dodi is so nice to put the first picture we have on the sharing. So you can see this picture. This picture is about anchoring the wire. So the anchor is the most important part and the basic part about wiring. So we have to identify the lower or inner part between the two branches we want to connect with the same piece of wire, and starting from the anchor, we want to wire one side, so one half of the wire in one direction, let's say clockwise, and the other half of the wire the other direction, let's say counterclockwise. So that's basically the main point of all the wiring system that I'm trying to teach you tonight. If Dodi come back on my image, I can also design to simplify a little bit that part. Can you come back on me, Dodi?
Sure.
Perfect. So here we have the board. So basically the concept is this. A piece of wire has two ends. So every time we cut a piece of wire, we end up with a straight line like this. So in the inner or in the lower point between the two branches that I want to wire, now let's design the two branches. So the inner point of the lower point is the point where I have my anchor. The anchor can be under, over, one side or the other side, if it's the trunk, for example. And then one part go clockwise, that means right, and the other part go counterclockwise, that means left. Very simple. If now we go on the little tree and we have a look, we can refer, for example, on the yellow wire. Yellow wire is connecting this primary branch with this one. You see the lower point in the trunk between this branch and this is my anchor, the U. From the anchor, this part that goes to this branch twist counterclockwise. So let me move this branch away so you can see. So twist left, and from the anchor, then the wire goes up clockwise and out clockwise in the second branch, that is the pair with the other one. So again, one piece of wire, two branches, two directions. This is the main point of all the wiring system that I try to teach you. So set this rule. Now we can introduce the next one, that is about the concept of the system. We all know that a tree with its ramification has a trunk and then has primary, secondary, tertiary branches. So to every order of ramification, we have to pair a size of wire. And we have to try, according to that, 2 by 2 to pair primary branches, one with another. And then when we have the primary branches wired, so for example, now my yellow first branch has its first wire, then 2 by 2 I will wire the secondary branches, and again, always inside outside, then I will wire the tertiary branches. We can now look at the picture number 2, Dodi. And this is exactly the concept that I'm trying to explain. We have a trunk, we have a branch. The branch is subdividing as a primary line, then as a secondary and tertiary lines. And you can see on this image, according to the color, blue is the wire that is connecting the primary branch with another one in another part of the trunk. And then again, green, inside, outside, is going to connect the two secondary that build that first section of the system. And then the red, again, inside, outside, is going to connect the other smaller branches. Very simple, very basic and simple. Obviously, a bonsai has some we can call defect or some more branches connected to any primary. But if we acquire this idea that you can really see very clear in this picture, for example, looking at the green wire, the inner point of the green where it connects and double up on the blue is my anchor, and then the green goes out clockwise, counterclockwise. Then it splits when the branch bifurcate, and again with the red is going to do the same, clockwise, counterclockwise, and again in the other side, counterclockwise, clockwise, according to the line and according to the position, in this case, of the tertiary branches. We have only to repeat the first two rules: anchor, inside, outside, two branches, one piece of wire, two directions. Now, if we look at the next image.
Sorry.
Not a problem.
There.
The next image obviously shows up a more complex system. So we have a primary, we have more secondary, we have tertiary, and more order of ramification. This system is done again to explain the concept of direction. You can see if we look, for example, the blue wire, and for simplicity, I put the blue one that is going clockwise, so right in the right branch according to the picture, and the other side is in the left branch, so counterclockwise. That basically is the starting point of the direction. You can follow out that direction into the main line of the right branch, following up totally the length, and also changing from the blue to the green, reaching then the red wire. And that line is going always clockwise, because following my system that goes 2 by 2 by 2 inside outside, the main line of the branch always stays with the same direction of wiring that we start from the anchor. And the side branches, according if they are right or left, and if they are the first one or the second, they change the direction of the wire. It's really a mathematical system. So when you get into that concept, it's almost impossible to fail. But obviously, it takes a little bit of time to understand these kind of rules of the system. So these rules are made with this concept of inside outside and help people to not overwire a tree. Because if every time, in this case I refer to color, every time you put a color and you only go from the anchor towards outside, the outer part of the branch, you never have the tendency of going back. That means wiring going towards the trunk of the tree. So you don't overwire part that basically don't need wire, but you only wire towards yourself. Can you go back on me, Dodi?
Yes.
Thank you. And eventually, you let me know if there is any question regarding this idea of the system.
I actually do have a question myself.
Yes?
And it may be dumb. Why is it important that one wire is clockwise and the other wire is counterclockwise?
It's very important because if you want to maintain the idea of the concept of the U, that is the anchor, okay, as your basically starting point for the wiring, is the only way to create a U anchor if one direction is clockwise and the other is opposite. Otherwise, it's impossible to make the U anchor. You can try in any tree. So if you don't put your wire and then one direction is clockwise and the other one is the inner part will be never a U. You understand? Because if the two parts, this is clockwise, okay, and also the other part is clockwise, you basically are only able to build a spring. There is no U anchor anywhere. And why we want a U anchor? We want a U anchor because when we apply, we have two branches. One is wired clockwise. Actually, let me use a different color. So if we have the anchor and then
Can't see the difference in color. Same color.
this is the red.
Oh, right.
I'm using it. So if one part is clockwise, so right, and this is counterclockwise, when we have the anchor and I start manipulating this branch, my tension basically stops to the anchor. If I connect two branches with the same direction wire, that in this case is all clockwise, when I move this branch, my tension will never stop in the inner part between the two branches, but is gonna go to the other one.
So then the two branches just rock back and forth, kind of.
Exactly. You are never, if you don't create your U, you're never able to hold the tension. The tension will be always bouncing.
Okay.
This also happens when you try to wire two branches at the same height, because there is not enough length, or there is not at least a twist of the wire between the two branches to hold the tension.
That's a good explanation.
Okay?
Yeah.
Any other question?
Not yet.
Not yet. Very good. So
They must know more about wiring than I do.
So now, when we have a primary branch, okay, and this branch has a piece of clockwise wire, okay. So as I said, just to reinforce the concept, I always size my wire. according to the first third of the total length of the branch. So we imagine that this branch is divided into third, third, and third. So I size my wire according to the first third, but I always wire until the second third. So the wire will be perfectly sized the first section with the rule, if it's copper, to 1/4 of the diameter of the branch, and then I run there. What happened? When I start having secondary branches, okay, now we have a leader that is my clockwise direction. So I know always if I want to fulfill the system where one piece of wire goes to two directions, and now I have to wire secondary branches that we can call 1, 2, 3, and then eventually also the tip of the branch that is my fourth. I already have my leader. So when I start from the inner branch, I know already that with my rule, the piece of wire that will connect, for example, the branch number 1 with the branch number 3, 1 plus 3, the one branch, number 1, need a piece of wire that has to run counterclockwise, because I already have one part of clockwise that will go over and connect to 3. So it's the only way to make my anchor is to start underneath the branch here, wire these counterclockwise, so going left, and then follow out clockwise, and then keep going clockwise to number 3. So again, one piece of wire, 2 branches, 1 counterclockwise, and 3 clockwise, because 3 is the second branch already connected to a part that is clockwise. Very simple. So I still fulfill the 2 easy rule. One piece of wire, 2 branches, 2 direction, and the anchor that is here. Now, obviously, my next piece of wire will connect branch number 2 and branch number 4. So we have 2 plus 4. Again, because I go always from the inner branch that is not wired outside. Again, because number 4 is my line of the branch, and we said that the main line of the branch is clockwise and has to go out clockwise. I know that this guy will be clockwise and this guy will be counterclockwise. In this case, the anchor is over because my inner branch is left. This will be counterclockwise, left, and this is clockwise, right? And again, 2 by 2, I connect them. This obviously is a system, and while I solve this system with these 2 very simple rules, it gets subdivided in smaller systems. So if we, for example, imagine that branch 1 has other side branches, now these become a smaller system, and I use it the same 2 rule, inside, outside, 1 piece of wire, 2 branches, 2 direction, and anchor to solve that. So I don't have to connect, for example, the tertiary branch coming from this system with another tertiary branch, because otherwise I will have to do the same way I did originally with the first wire that connected the 2 secondary branches, and I overwire where it's not necessary. It's not so simple to understand this right away on a Zoom meeting, we're gonna try to explain it also on a tree later, but the best is in person where we can actually see it, experiment together, and really understand that rule well. Any question so far?
Absolutely, they're coming in. That was
Very
a
good.
brilliant explanation. So a couple questions. So when you want to wire the primary branch down, do you have to start on the top of the branch or the bottom?
Very good. So this question is connected to an old way to see wiring. I remember originally when I start with bonsai, they always told me if you start here, you push the branch down. If you start here, you push the branch up. This is still when the concept of wiring was a bidimensional concept.
Say that again.
That concept of moving up or down according if the wire is over or under the branch is a concept connected to when we thought wiring was a bidimensional thing. But actually, the overall concept of wiring is three-dimensional. We never move, or rarely happen that we move a branch just up and down. We generally move away a branch towards a certain direction. And actually, if you think what we just said until now, we are talking about wrapping around the wire to the branch. So we are creating a three-dimensional movement around the branch. It's not just a piece of straight wire that push against the branch. It's a piece of wire that basically go around the branch, apply a certain amount of tension, and also if we wire well and we don't leave gaps, that wire also absorb tension from the branch. Said that, now when I want to move a branch either up or down, but I want to move that branch left or right, I need to wire that branch or clockwise if I want to move that branch down, up, but left, according on me standing in front of the branch, or if I want to move the branch down and right, or either up and right, that branch need to be wired counterclockwise. Because, as I said, the movement is three-dimensional, and when we move the branch, the concept is we want the wire to tight to the branch, because when the wire tight to the branch is when is able to apply and release tension. So when I pick my primary branches 2 by 2, for example, I have my primary yellow here. So this that is counterclockwise is a branch that has to go down and twist to the right side. Because when I do that movement, the wire in the first section has to tight to the branch and basically force the movement, not letting the branch break. That's the explanation about the movement of the branch.
So let me see if I got it.
Yeah.
So if you want to bend the branch down, you need to apply the wire counterclockwise.
If you want to go, for example, this is your front, actually, this is your front. So this branch is on your left side. So generally the lower branches, they go down and forward. So if this branch is in the left side and you want to move it down and forward, you need to wire it counterclockwise, because this is the torsion. If the branch is on the other side, let's see with, let me see, here it is. This is on cock, here it is. You have another branch, you go and always move towards the direction when the wire tied to the branch. Understand?
Yeah, I think. So if it's clockwise, do we move the branch up if it's clockwise?
You can move, let's take this guy, you can move it up, but you have to go or up or down, but still
You're
on
twisting
the
it.
direction where the wire is twisting. So if the wire is twisting right, you go up or down towards the left because you want this spiral to tight to the branch.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Someone asked, does the anchor always wrap around the branch before it? Your typo didn't make sense to me, David. Maybe you could retype it. Does your anchor always wrap around the branch before it extends on the secondary branch? Is that what you're asking, David?
Okay, so I understand the question. So now,
Okay, that was right.
let's imagine that we have a branch that splits in two, like this, okay? So the first thing is to create the anchor. So for example, if we want our right branch to be wired clockwise, we start the anchor over and then we wire clockwise. Normally what I do is I do two loops in the one of the main line, then I finish the other one that is counterclockwise, and then I go and I finish that. Always from the anchor, that is in this case is over, to the two branches. Obviously, this is because I'm planning to push these two branches together because the clockwise will move the branch inside, so left, and the counterclockwise will move the branch inside, so right. So always you position the anchor thinking when you have no other pieces of wire according to the direction you want to move the branches. It's always important to start from the anchor and then come out to the two branches because it's the place where most of the tension is insisting. If I wire totally this branch before fulfilling the first section of the anchor, I risk that all the tension I'm applying along this branch will accumulate here without being able to be oiled and the branch will crack.
Would it be a safe generalization to say that most branches on the right are done counterclockwise and most branches on the left are done counterclockwise?
I will not say that because it always depends how is your desire choices. Because when I look on a tree and I decide the primary branches I want in a certain position, is that the moment I will decide if they will need to be wired clockwise or counterclockwise.
Okay. I have another question.
Yeah.
Do you ever anchor wires to the bonsai pot? And if so, under what circumstances?
So I generally never anchor a wire to the bonsai pot, apart if it's a guy wire. I can decide I don't want to wire a branch to move it. So in that case, I want to do only a bidimensional movement that is moving the branch down. So I can guy wire that branch and anchor to the pot. But for example, if we are talking about the wire that sometimes, not always, we put of the main trunk of the wire that obviously doesn't have a pair to fulfill the rule of the two. Sometimes we have to stick that wire in the ground, but basically it's not anchored to the pot. is anchored to the what we call the shin of the bonsai, that is the core of the root ball. So we stick it there, and then from that point, that part acts as my anchor. The wire goes up and wire the main line of the trunk. But generally, otherwise, these are the only two cases that the wire interact with the pot or the soil in this case.
Excellent. All right. Well, those are the questions so far.
Very good. So now we can get to the last picture, that is the fourth one.
All righty.
And that picture, as I said, you can share this picture with anyone who want. I do a little kind of advertisement break. I have a YouTube channel, Bonsai Dream, and in my YouTube channel there are more extended video about wiring and video where I explain this technique, so you can look there. If you can also get my first bonsai book, Bonsai Dream #1, there is an entire article about wiring, and in that article there are QR code that you can scan with your mobile phone, and every one of these images that actually is a part of that article of my first book, related to every one of these images, there is a video where I literally show the topic that we are kind of trying to analyze. Okay, so this last picture is about how and where to anchor when we have an already wired branch. We said so far that one branch can be wired clockwise or counterclockwise. You have the example here. If we look in the right part of the picture, we have the main line that is wired clockwise, blue wire, and the other part on the left, that is a branch that is wired counterclockwise. So is kind of easy concept to understand where then to start my anchor point when is time to wire the secondary branches. So the rule is very simple, because are only two positions that, if now I design the section of my branch, so let's imagine to cut a branch and look through the section, basically the anchor, so that you can be on only over or can only start under the branch. Okay, these are basically the two positions. The two positions are related to the side where you have the secondary branch. And if now you go back at the picture and we try to connect these to that fourth picture, you can easily see then when the main wire is the blue one, either way, clockwise or counterclockwise, is related to a branch that is in the same side where the wire twists. So if we look in the upper right corner, we have clockwise blue wire and a right secondary branch. The anchor is under the branch. If you go in the left bottom corner, is the same example, but with left primary wire on a left branch, and the anchor is again under. And opposite, exactly opposite, are the other two. So the upper left is counterclockwise, but with right branch, so opposite direction. The branch is in the opposite direction than where the wire twists. That's why the anchor is over the branches on the top. And again, the right bottom little sketch is the same when the wire is clockwise and the branch is left. Again, not so easy to explain on a video call, but that's basically the rule. It's a little bit like trying to explain mathematics, and when you get into these concepts, all of a sudden, and you apply them, that is what we're trying to do in the next session of this lesson. When you try to apply them, they then start making sense. You can come back to me and tell me if there is any question.
No questions so far.
Very good. Hopefully, I'm not losing too many people in this kind of
This
crazy university look of the wiring technique.
I think it's very, very good. It's
Good.
starting to make sense to me.
Yeah, hopefully. So basically, I came out with these ideas because I had to teach my students how to wire properly, and for me it was very important that they were getting the concept and understand it very well, because that's basically all about practicing. Okay, so.
Mhm.
Now, I hope you can see, I'm here in front of this little trident maple. I pick a deciduous tree where it's a little bit easier to show you some branches without having the foliage in the middle. Okay, so basically, the concept is very simple. I cut, I'm working with aluminum wire. Let's make a little first point. When I wire, the tools that generally I need to have according to the type of work is obviously wire cutter, bigger or smaller, whatever you are more comfortable with. I like big wire cutter because especially in case I have to remove wire, it always help me. In general, when I wire, I use one of these three scissors, and according to the type of wiring I'm doing, refinement, very small scissor, intermediate wiring, this other kind of a wire cutter is a little bit in between a wire cutter and a scissor, or styling, first styling and wiring, so scissor that I use also as a wire cutter. You can even use one of those Ryuga $10 scissor, very strong. The white and red handle ones, I use them a lot. But let's say that we go for this guy tonight. So what I do, first of all, once is about holding the scissor always in my hand. So I have my finger free, and I can still, anytime I need, use the scissor to cut the wire and then keep wiring. Save me as a professional a lot of time rather than pushing down and picking up the tool. Okay, so I hold it in my hand. And the other thing is about the posture we are. So because the idea is to wire from the inner part of the trunk outside, I need to be in a comfortable position. Generally, the best is having a table where I put the tree that can go up and down, and also a chair that can go up and down. So I can always have the branches that I'm wiring in the height of my chest. That's the best position I can have to wire. Why? Because when I wire from inside outside and I only do this movement with my arms, I don't get tired. If I don't put any pressure and I don't do any movement high up my shoulder or trying to bend my body towards the tree, my resistance is much higher. And especially for me that I'm a professional and sometimes I have to wire non-stop 8 hours a day because I have to work big trees for my client or even for myself, having a perfect position in front of the tree is very important. Said that, I always try to understand the two branches I'm gonna wire. So let's say I wanna move this branch to the right, towards me, so left, this branch in. So my anchor will be in the lower point between the two branches. I cut a piece of wire that generally is 1/3 longer than the two branches. I start, as I said, in my anchor, that is the lower point between the two branches. I do the first two twists here. So I secure my anchor. Rather than go directly on the branch, I can do one twist more around the trunk. Here we are.
Or do you always do that?
So
You always go around the trunk all the
if I
way?
have enough space between the two branches, I always prefer to do at least one twist because this will hold the tension much better. Okay, and then in this case, these branch splits in two. I'm wiring clockwise, so I keep following out my right branch. Okay, and I always stop my piece of wire after a bifurcation. I never stop the wire before a bifurcation because it can happen that in this case I have an inner branch here, but some other time I don't have that branch. So if I don't, if I stop before the bifurcation, I risk that when it's time to wire these two branches, I don't have the connection between the previous wire and the second wire. Now I have a little piece of over, I cut it off, and now I finish wiring my other branch, and also for this one, I pass by the bifurcation. So I always said this, wiring is like playing a chess game. If you can think in advance, analyzing the system you have available, and already in your head pairing two by two the branches, then the moment you basically apply the wire is the moment that everything is gonna make sense. So I already, by doing this first piece of wire, I already analyze all my system. And now is already subdivided with these two. So now I have these other two branches, and I know already that if I'm gonna wire these two, and then I'm gonna wire these two, and then I'm gonna wire these two, I will fulfill my rules and I have the better use of the wire possible. That's why I go here, that is still the lower point between those two branches, and with a little bit smaller piece of wire compared to the previous one, I wire them together. Stopping here, always after adjustment, and again, stopping here. Then you can see already that with just two pieces of wire, I already wire 4 branches. Again, because every piece basically connect 2 and 2. Very simple. Now that we downsize, because we have to downsize the wire according to the size of the branches, I can dedicate to the 1, 2, 3, and 4 system that are resulting by applying the first pieces of wire. Let's say also because it's more in the front of the camera, I will take care of this one. This has 1, 2, and then I have to do also the last one. So again, thinking in advance. Obviously, I know that I need to start from the inner branch. Can you see?
Oh, your mouth.
You might turn the tree a little to the right some.
Let me see.
The other
this?
way. I
The
think
other
the
way.
other way.
Like this, can you see?
A little better. Maybe if it's a teeny bit higher, would be nice.
Can you hold this, Michael, one moment? Thank you, Michael. Can you see the branch better now?
Yes,
from the
that's
top?
better. Thank
Very
you.
good. So basically, this little system has 1, 2, and the outer part. We know already the outer part has to be, as we said, the same direction as the main one. Main wire is right. So I will do inside. So you see right wire, left branch, anchor over, opposite direction. So I go out. I don't go to this one because otherwise I don't know with who I will wire this. My wire keep running out and finish the main line of the branch that is clockwise. The inner branch is obviously opposite because we said if one part is clockwise, the other one is counterclockwise. And I wire the first two. Now, this is not a perfect system. I have only a single branch here, but I still repeat the same idea and the same concept. Is a left branch connected to a right wire, anchor is over, I anchor outside, I don't go back, and then I wire the branch. Boom, boom, boom. Tack, and this little system is done. So I only double the wire here, and I have 1, 1, 1, and 2 here. And my system is solved. Now we can move in the next system. Let me just turn 3. Can you see this?
Bring the camera up. There you go. Thank
There
you.
we go. Perfect. So you see, we analyze the system. We have 2 here, first pair, and then we have these 2. Very simple. So we start here, inner point between the 2. I go out first because it's my strong line. I anchor. You see, now I can move this one and it's well anchored to this section. This is counterclockwise because it's connected to a clockwise line. I go out here, and then I keep going out in the clockwise line with this one. Now I have these 2. Again, inside, outside. Very simple. I start again in this position. I follow again out the wire, and I reach the branch I'm wiring here, finish this one, and then connecting out here.
You make it look so easy.
It is easy because it's just 2 rules.
Well, I get it.
The problem, you can go back to me, there we go. The problem, guys, and this is also between, thanks to my experience, most of the time I get a new student in my workshop, in fact, right? A person that is just approaching to bonsai, never wire a tree, never, ever in his life, doesn't have. I give him these 2 rules, inside, outside, 2 branches, 1 piece of wire, 2 direction. After 2 hours, he's able to wire a tree fully, no problem. Most of the time and it happened to me, that I learn wiring, picking ideas here and there. You have so many bad habits that breaking and removing those bad habits cost less time and effort than for a person new in bonsai to learn this system brand new. Because a lot of people tend always, for example, that's the main mistake people does. always go back and re-anchor inside somewhere and run single pieces of wire out in the branches. This is one of the main mistakes. Or not having a little bit the concept of trying to pair the branches and then always rely to one branch as the anchor for all the other branches. And obviously then that branch gets 5 pieces of wire and then while you wire all the rest. So these are a little bit the typical mistake that, people, they don't have a proper, wiring method explained, tend to go back and try to find out a way how to wire a tree. And it's very simple. Every time I say, people said, yeah, but you are too strict on wiring, and then the wire, has to stay here a few months or a year, and then you have to take it off. And I said, yes, but there is a very big difference that wiring a tree well or wiring a tree badly. And the biggest difference is about the amount of stress you give to the tree. I apply and I solve these little branches that we just see with 10 pieces of wire is a very little amount of stress for the tree. But if my wiring is not good and I put 20 or 30 pieces of wire, obviously I stress the branch much more. And obviously every time I put a piece of wire, I stress the fiber of the branch and the branch lose energy and sap and moisture. So then when it's time for the branch to grow, all that stress basically comes out with some branches that dry out and die, some little crack that we haven't seen. But if I'm very precise on my wiring, I'm sure all the branches I wire, they will stay alive and they will keep, growing and getting stronger and building what is the structure I want for the design of my tree. That's very important to understand.
It's excellent. Well, I have a question.
Very good.
When wiring secondary branches and trying to land the wire on the outside of the crotch, do you ever cross the primary wires?
So we always tend to avoid crossing, but basically when let's design this branch so that there is a bifurcation, okay? So this is my primary and then there are 2 secondary. So the primary has a clockwise wire that stops basically here. What I can do when I wire these other 2, obviously in this case is a right branch on right wire, my anchor is underneath. So the red is gonna go there. When the red meets the green wire, I can, on purpose, because I wanna seal the point between the 2 wires, I can overcross the end of the green wire with the red wire coming over. And this is basically a cross on purpose when one piece of wire go, design a little bit bigger, go over the last part of the green that stops, because basically, as I said, I want to push that wire against the branch, and the moment I will manipulate this secondary branch, having that sealing between the 2 pieces of wire will not allow me to basically, with the movement I give to the branch, unwire that section from the green wire. That's the only moment a crossing is admitted.
Excellent. Another question.
Yeah.
How do you work with brittle branches, unusual growth patterns, or uneven bark textures?
So there are different type of trees, and with my experience, traveling and going all over the world, it happened that sometimes people put me in front of a tree that I don't know. So, I work on many different species of trees, but that always come the person in Ecuador that want you to grow that burning bush tree that you never see. So basically what I do, I just try to understand the tree and rely aesthetically to other species I worked. And then if happen, especially if I had to cut a branch because it's not needed, I kind of measure the flexibility the brands have. And if I understand that tree is stiff, obviously I try also to measure my wiring and apply the wire in a certain way when also aesthetically is not needed a very high amount of manipulation. I make you this example. In Italy, one of the trees that are the most brutal to wire is rosemary. Okay? So rosemary for 11 out of the 12 months of the year is extremely brutal. There is only 1 month that is when it's extremely dry, that generally is between middle July and middle August, that in that period, especially, the tree is a little bit more flexible. So that tree in particular, we tend to wire in the moment we know it's not as brutal as, because it goes in a kind of a stasis during summer and it gets more flexible because there is not enough more sap inside. It's totally opposite than pines. On pines, more sap means more flexibility. On rosemary, for example, is when is dormant in summer is the moment where the tree is more flexible. So we tend to do more movement there. Then the other thing you can use if you're planning to bend the branches pretty hardly. You can use raffia. You can even there are some people who wrap around the wire some paper, so that paper will also protect the branch. If the branch tend to be very stiff or the bark is very brutal, some trees have a beautiful bark and you don't want to ruin. So there are some people that spend hours wrapping some paper around the wire to kind of protect that bark. But in general, also, especially as I said, if the tree is stiff, especially some species that are grafted, let's say cork bark black pine is not as flexible as a normal black pine. So I know that style-wise, I cannot pretend to treat that tree and manipulate that tree in the same way I do on one of my Scots pine. One of my Scots pine in Europe are super flexible. We can do heavy bending, in spring especially, and we can put branches in any position.
Okay, excellent. Well, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay.
You've been explaining it. I do have a comment from someone who
Okay.
said, I'm loving this format. The photos, the drawings, the age, the demo. It's fantastic.
Perfect. I'm glad. I tried to make it kind of understandable for everyone. I'm sorry, it's very difficult not being one-on-one and be able, to show you right there the moment when everything is happening. It's not so easy, but I think, and especially if you really want to understand better these and you search on my YouTube channel some of those videos I said, you can get a little bit of refreshment and maybe, I always try to change the way I teach because not every people learn in the same way. So changing a little bit the format that goes, for example, from the branch to the board to the tree, I can kind of capture more whatever can be the people understanding on the situation. And also, as I said, if you go on my YouTube channel and there are other videos related to wiring, you can keep understanding more and more and more about this. And again, I will be at the GSBF show, so if you will take a workshop with me, I will be pretty sure that
you'll be learning.
You understand wiring, because that's one of the main things. It is not the most important, but in my opinion, as the range of technique we apply to the trees is the most important to learn and understand. Because yes, if you do deciduous tree, you can get away with a little bit of wiring, because you can do guy wire, some pieces, most clip and grow, that's fine. But if you want to do conifer especially, and you don't know how to wire, that will be a losing battle. Trust me.
I'm going to ask a question that I think there is not a simple answer for.
Let's try.
How long does it typically take for wire before it starts biting in? And I know that differs per species.
So also that is a little bit a question of a strategy. Let's say if I'm wiring a deciduous tree, I generally tend to do it or as soon as the tree lose the leaves in autumn, so I know that at least the wire can stay on the tree until early to late spring, so it has a month to adjust in the branches, and then it's time to remove it. Or even some time to when I style some of my deciduous tree and I do the first styling, I kind of at the end of summer defoliate the tree, remove the leaves, I wire the tree, then in my place that get pretty cool in early autumn, the tree is gonna flash back again leaves, then go through autumn, and then at the end of spring I will remove the wire. Let's say that wiring and unwiring technique for deciduous and conifer are a little bit two different things. On a deciduous tree, because the way that can normally grow, let's generalize elm, maples to talk about the most common deciduous that we work, they tend already in spring, as soon as they start growing, even if the tree is advanced to finish, they tend already to thick up the branches. So it's necessary to basically remove all the wire. Whatever wire we put has to go away. Different story is for conifer. Generally, when we wire a conifer, and I always say, when we wire a primary branch on a conifer, the wire don't go away until that branch is not in the final position. So that wire can even stay a couple of seasons in position in a conifer for two reasons. Conifer is much flexible than a deciduous tree, so generally take a little bit longer time to set in position. And second, is not a problem, and actually sometimes is necessary to allow the wire on a conifer to bite into the branch a little bit if we want to force the branch in a certain position. Because if we remove in a conifer the wire too early, we risk that most of the branches are gonna flop back in position. So my strategy is always, when I wire the first time the tree, and I wire primary, secondary, tertiary branches, talking about conifer, a year after, I check on the wire, and generally I remove most of the primary wire and some secondary wire. I don't have to rewire again that sections because they are already in position. But I just wire some more order of ramification that in the meantime the tree creates. And if I do that work well year after year, I don't have to rewire parts that have been already wired because they set in position. And I always add some more wire to the outside until I reach more or less, I say, after between 6 and 8 wiring session, the final shape of the tree. That's from my experience.
Okay. I have another question.
Yeah.
It's a little long. Do you have to wire the whole tree, or can you wire just a few select branches? Have you heard that when you wire partially, then the tree pushes or grows the unwired branches more than the wired ones?
So yes, there are certain species more than other, and they have these kind of, let's say, sensibility to understand which branches are constrained by wiring and other that are not, and so they push more energy in the not wired branches. Is possible to wire just some branches, knowing that this particular issue is happening. The most common is on conifer. So what happened on some conifer, one in particular are junipers or taxus, for example. You know, we wire the branches and we have a very nicely wired structure. Let's imagine these two branches are wired, okay? And then what the tree does, rather than pushing here, is gonna go in the crutches and shoot out a runner from the crutches that for juniper is very typical, especially here. Now I'm in Los Angeles, so I'm referring, for example, on California juniper. California juniper is one of those. You always tend to go back into a crotch or the inner side of the branch and shoot out a very strong runner. If we are not precise and remove these runners straight away, what's happening is that the runner is taking advantage of the two wired branches and suck away all the energy from them. And because the tree feels that that guy can grow with no constriction, the tree is moving all the auxin, that are the growing hormone, from the two tips, and basically the two tips, they tend to go back and kind of dying back because this part is sucking the energy. So we have to be careful on that about this question of wiring or not wiring part of the tree. So also that knowing the species can give us a good understanding how wiring can be done.
Okay. Another question is, what trees or situations should you not wire at all, but rather pinch and grow?
Okay, so the first one is if the tree is not strong and healthy. If the tree has any disease, it happens that sometimes people that are not very expert bring to a workshop a tree that is a little bit weak for different reasons. It could be a tree that was just repotted, so I very disagree about wiring the tree because you will give an extra stress to a tree. So normally my preference is when I manipulate the foliage, I don't touch the root. So I always work the two parts in two different times, at least 6 months in distance one to the other. Or sometimes, you know, a tree is not the right time, because there's also the other question. We need to understand that when is the most hot and dry season is not the right time to wire a tree, because as I said, when we wire more or less, the manipulation cause a loss of moisture from the branches. So if there is too much dehydration from the environment, the tree is suffering and is not able to put up with the need of water that the wood tissue has after wiring, and it can lose some branches. So I tend always, in my perspective, to work on trees between autumn and spring in the northern hemisphere. If I do refinement, that is a little fine wire, I can basically do anytime. But generally, what I do, and I do it a lot, when it's summer in my place, I go in South America, where that is winter, and is the right time to work on the trees. So I move up and down according to the seasons, and this gives me a better range of possibility to the right time on wiring the tree. Again, is always understanding the tree, have a good understanding of the earth of the tree, and knowing if it's the right time, if the tree is ready, because it's also the other thing. Understanding if the tree is ready is very important.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, does anybody else have any more questions? I've not heard wiring explained like this, and it's not simple for me to do, but your concepts make sense.
Very good. That's important.
Now it's practice.
I look some videos about space and how time works and everything. So I try to understand some of those concepts, and they look so difficult to me. But then when you get some of those time speed concept, you understand how universe works. So probably is a little bit also about wiring.
Well, I have a compliment for you. She said,
Ooh.
thank you. I hadn't realized you had an architectural background before today, but it makes perfect sense. Your
Yeah.
systematic wiring method and level of precision and artistry is very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, you think is it's useful. And, going back to that topic, I was teach two concepts that I really took from the architecture that I can always remember. First one, when I did and I studied at the university, I had many professors because we always rely to one person when we do bonsai, and I think we should be more open to try to pick from everyone something to really make our understanding of the art more complete. And I became an architect doing 36 exams with 36 different teachers, not with only one. And the same in architecture, that is art form based, of programming, projecting, and everything. And it's very similar with bonsai. I always knew that if I want to build a house properly, aesthetic is important, but technique as always to support side by side the aesthetic. Otherwise, with no technique, there is no aesthetic.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, there's one question I'm going to answer because they asked what will be the topic of the discussion at the conference in Santanella. And there isn't just one topic. For those of you that have not been to the Bonsai Rendezvous, Mauro, along with Suthan, are going to be our headliners. And on Friday, they will both be doing bring your own tree workshops where participants sign up and bring their trees, and we'll be working with Mauro or with Suthan. They'll each do workshops in the morning and afternoon. And then on Saturday, they will both be working on trees, styling them during the day, throughout the day, and explaining their technique and what they're doing. And then those trees will be live auctioned off Saturday night. The GSBF Rendezvous is both a fundraiser to help fund GSBF for the next 2 years so that we can give back to the clubs. But even more importantly, it's educational. We really want to help build bonsai and help people learn how to build better bonsai. So we'll also have other workshops for participants and educational seminars. So that's the end of that commercial. But well, there are still more questions. Somebody asked, I suspect there might be a new to bonsai. What is a good tree option if you live in the mostly colder environment, coastal. And I don't know if they're asking as far as to grow a tree or to have a tree to wire.
Okay, so if we are staying into California and talk about the northern part of California, uh, most of the junipers they do very well up in the Bay Area, for example. I will say Kishu or either Utah juniper, Sierra juniper. I would say that California juniper is better in the Southern California area, doesn't do very well in places that they tend to be cold and moister environment. But if you are in those areas, it's better, to start, looking for some juniper. There are also some pines that you can grow. For example, lodgepole pine. And in the coast of the northern part of California, you have one beautiful species I was able to work a few times. Is the pygmy cypress, is a Cupressus pygmy that is a beautiful variety and very nice for bonsai. Very tiny little foliage. It's another very nice variety. Talking about conifer, obviously. But yeah, these eventually could be some species to looking for.
Excellent. Somebody asked if you have to rewire a branch, should you rewire in the same spot and direction, or should it be in the opposite direction?
So, if in general speaking, I will always try to go in the opposite direction than the groove that the previous wire left. Let's say like that. But if I need to move still that branch in the same direction that I apply the wire the first time, in that case, obviously the previous wire was clockwise. I still need to put the wire clockwise for a technical, need. So I try to space different the wire, so I not finish inside of the same groove, but I stay in the part in between.
Excellent, excellent. Someone said, thank you so much for sharing these concepts. It's very helpful to explain, especially to new learners.
Beautiful, thank you.
And Robert said, great job, very informative. Knowing rosemary is more flexible in the summer is helpful. So, and we have various thank yous and great job comments as well.
Thank you all for the opportunity to the GSBF, and thank you for all of you to stay in front of the phone, computer, television tonight and spend time sometimes with me and knowing each other better. My passion for bonsai. I'm coming in Los Angeles already for more than 10 years, and I like to come here and spend time nowadays with my friends here. There are even no more clients. There is family.
That's wonderful. Are you willing to take another question?
Yeah, sure. Anything.
Okay.
No problem.
The person says, sometimes there's a technique to leave the wire buried on the branch. What species are good to use this technique?
So basically, if, for example, you do field grow production of some species that tend to grow very fast. There is a client I have in Brazil that grows Femina juniper in the field. What he does, the first wiring in the trunk, use the wire to bend the tree and give the movement, and he let the wire inside of the trunk because he knows that basically over that wire the tree is gonna be fusing itself again, and by fusing is not basically gonna get strangulated. The important is the spiral a little bit open. If you do if you tend to do a spiral very close, that wire will tend to strangulate the tree, and over the years, that branch or part of the trunk eventually can die. But if the tree has the capacity of regrowing over and fusing over the wire, then the wire can stay in with no problem. I advise to do that only when you do field production with some trees and you planning to let them grow. When you have a tree that is formed or some branches, I don't advise to allow the wire to bite in and stay inside of the branch, because even if the branch basically cover the wire, you will, before or after, maybe have the need to move that branch. If that section that is a little bit weak because it was refusing together and is not part of a normal branch where you have the hardwood, phloema and xylema, but everything is mixed up because the branch re-heal in a certain way, that part will be always weak. And if you manipulate it again, that branch can eventually die.
Great. Good answer. It's not a technique to be used all the time.
No, no. There is a specific, goal and moment that you want to use it. But for example, I do field grow Scots back home. It happened that some of them, I on purpose let some aluminum wire inside. They ball out, creating also kind of some unnatural look in the trunk. I didn't really like. Most of the wire ones, when I remove the wire and they get the good movement, the taper on the trunk was much better.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you have explained wiring in a way much clearer than I've ever heard before.
Very good. Thank you.
Based upon the comments I'm reading, they are very excited. One person said, "This is so helpful. I'm excited to wire a tree myself now."
Beautiful. Yeah.
You
The
know?
best is thinking about this little detail, sit in front of the tree, clear your mind, and just start inside, outside with one piece of wire and repeat the operation branch after branch, primary, secondary, tertiary, and then you go into the flow and the wire will be part of your blood.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Mauro.
Thank you.
I know that people have enjoyed this, and I'm pretty sure you're going to have a lot of people want to bring your
Very
own
good. I'm
workshops.
glad.
You're a
Thank
very good
you.
teacher.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much, and hope everybody comes to the rendezvous next this coming weekend is Shoheen and Santanella, if those are interested. And if you need to watch this video again, it'll be on the GSBF YouTube channel in a couple of weeks.